What if I told you that the Great Depression never really ended? What if everything we're living through today, soaring prices, collapsing savings, manipulated markets, isn't a cycle, but a sequel? Because behind every stock boom, every stimulus package, every rescue, lurks the same ghost that haunted 1929. Speculation built on illusion. Back then, it was margin loans, ordinary Americans borrowing to buy stocks they couldn't afford. Today, it's derivatives, digital IOUs stacked on digital promises. The names changed, but the hunger didn't. The same playbook of deception, greed, and bailout is still being run, just with faster algorithms and global coordination. The Dow Jones was the casino then. The entire global banking system is the casino now. So when you feel your grocery bill rise or your rent double while billionaires get richer overnight, remember, this isn't bad luck. It's design. And tonight we're pulling the mask off that design, tracing the eerie symmetry between 1929 and today's economy. Before we dive in, quick check. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments so we know how far this truth travels. And if you're tired of the lies they feed you on mainstream finance shows, hit that subscribe button. Because what's coming next isn't theory, it's the unfiltered truth. In 1929, America was invincible, or so it thought. The Roaring Twenties were a frenzy of optimism. Stocks soared by 400%. Everyday people, secretaries, farmers, factory workers were borrowing to buy shares. The motto was simple: the market always goes up. Sound familiar? Banks offered margin loans covering 90% of a stock's price. Investors could buy $10,000 worth of shares with just $1,000 down. Everyone wanted in. It wasn't just a market, it was a mania. Then came October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday. Panic selling began. By the end of that week, $30 billion in market value had evaporated. To put that in perspective, that was more than the entire federal budget at the time. The ripple effect was brutal. Banks failed, credit froze. Unemployment hit 25%. Breadlines formed. Now let's fast forward nearly a century. What do we see? Corporate debt at record highs. Stock markets inflated not by productivity, but by buybacks. Central banks printing trillions to keep the illusion alive. Sound familiar? In 2008, the crash came not from stocks, but from something more abstract: mortgage-backed securities. These were bundles of home loans sold as safe investments. But just like the 1920s margin loans, they were built on air. When homeowners defaulted, the system collapsed. Millions lost their homes. Trillions vanished. And how did the elites respond? The same way they did in 1929, with bailouts, new acronyms, and reassurances that the system is stronger than ever. Sound familiar yet? What the public wasn't told was that 2008 wasn't a failure. It was a prototype. It was a rehearsal for something bigger, a global architecture of financial control built around derivatives, swaps, and liquidity loops so complex that even regulators can't untangle them. In 1929, speculation was confined to Wall Street. Today, it's coded into the bloodstream of global finance, from pension funds to crypto markets. The mechanisms changed, the consequences didn't. We live in an era where the illusion of prosperity is printed, leveraged, and traded at the speed of light. But like 1929, illusions have a breaking point, and that breaking point is closer than you think. Here's where the story turns from historical déjà vu to something far darker. After 2008, central banks didn't just rescue the system, they merged with it. They created liquidity facilities, repo windows, and swap lines, innocent-sounding terms that hide a single truth: private debt became public currency. The Federal Reserve started backing not just banks, but hedge funds, foreign institutions, even shadow lenders with no oversight. And through this quiet process, a new empire was born: the derivatives network. Derivatives are financial bets on future prices, on stocks, bonds, interest rates, even the weather. Their notional value? Over $1.2 quadrillion. That's $1,200 trillion, more than 10 times the GDP of the entire planet. Who controls this system? Not your government, not your bank, but a handful of mega institutions: JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs. The same names that appear in every financial crisis, from 1929 to 2008 to today. And when one of them trembles, central banks intervene, printing money, lowering rates, or quietly transferring liquidity in the dead of night. It's the 1920s all over again, but automated, global, and invisible. And here's the kicker. These institutions are now so intertwined that one failure could cascade through the entire world in hours. In 1929, it took weeks for the crash to spread. Today, it would take seconds. The question is, who designed this system, and why? The receipt is wilder than you think. The mechanism that links 1929 to today is leverage, the art of making small money control massive bets. In the 1920s, margin traders borrowed $9 for every $1 they invested. Now imagine thousands of these bets stacked, cross-insured, and repackaged globally. That's the modern system. These derivatives, especially interest rate swaps, allow banks to gamble on the direction of rates. When rates stay predictable, everyone profits. When they move sharply, the losses are apocalyptic. In 2023 alone, when interest rates rose faster than at any time in 40 years, global bond markets lost over $10 trillion in value. That's not a typo, $10 trillion. Sound familiar? Margin calls, liquidations, banks whispering about liquidity issues. Behind the scenes, the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank opened emergency swap lines, essentially secret money pipelines between nations to prevent a full-blown collapse. They told the public it was temporary. But records show these liquidity lifelines have been active since 2008, quietly rolling over billions every single week. That's not stabilization, that's life support. And here's the kicker. These swaps aren't loans, they're currency creations. The Fed sends dollars abroad, other central banks send back their own currencies, and both pretend it's a temporary exchange. But those dollars never really disappear. They circulate, inflating asset bubbles everywhere they land. This is the ghost of 1929 reanimated, artificial money fueling artificial growth. In the 1920s, they called it easy credit. Today, in the 2020s, it's unlimited liquidity. It's the same illusion, just in a different era. Let's start with some numbers, and I promise they'll tell a story you won't forget. Back in 1929, right before the Great Crash, total U.S. debt was around 260% of the country's entire economic output. Fast forward to today, and global debt has exploded to over $315 trillion. That's more than 340% of the world's GDP. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The derivatives market, a complex web of financial bets, adds another $1,200 trillion in what's called synthetic exposure. It's like a shadow economy floating on top of the real one. To keep this whole precarious structure from collapsing, central banks around the world have printed more than $30 trillion since the 2008 financial crisis. $30 trillion. Here in the US, the situation is even more surreal. In 2024, over 70% of corporate profits didn't come from making things or providing real services. They came from financial engineering, stock buybacks, debt shuffling, and accounting tricks. This isn't a productive economy, it's a house of cards. And we all know what happens to a house of cards when just one piece is pulled out. When a single domino falls, let's say a major bond defaults or a currency suddenly crashes, the entire chain begins to quiver. Think it can't happen? Just look at the mini-crisis in the UK in late 2022. Pension funds, the retirement savings of millions, were on the verge of imploding overnight. Why? They were using a complex derivatives strategy called liability-driven investing, or LDI. In simple terms, it was a massive leveraged bet that everything would stay stable. But then bond yields spiked unexpectedly. The bets went sour, and the margin calls came rushing in, demanding billions of dollars that the funds didn't have. The system was seconds from a meltdown. The Bank of England had to step in, launching an emergency bond buying program, printing £65 billion in just a few weeks to stop the collapse. Does any of this sound familiar? Panic. It's the ghost of 1929 all over again. This is exactly how modern finance hides its fragility, through layers and layers of complexity designed to obscure a very simple, terrifying truth. Everything, absolutely everything, depends on borrowed confidence. Every promise from a central bank, every surge in the stock market, every headline celebrating a soft landing is just another attempt to keep that confidence alive. But here is the secret they don't want you to know. Confidence is the most leveraged asset of all. It takes years to build and only seconds to shatter. And once it cracks, the system unravels faster than anyone can possibly react. Even the world's top regulators know this. That is why the Bank for International Settlements, often called the Central Bank for Central Banks, issued a chilling warning in 2023. They revealed that $80 trillion in hidden dollar debt is sitting off the official balance sheets, mostly in derivatives and foreign currency swaps. Let that sink in. $80 trillion. Hidden. That's the secret architecture, the shadow banking network that connects hedge funds, insurance companies, and even governments in a tangled web of obligations that nobody can fully map out. It's the exact same structural flaw that caused the domino effect in 1929, except this time, the dominoes are global, they're digital, and they're 1,000 times bigger. The ghost of 1929 isn't just haunting us, it's running the entire system. And here is the most chilling part. Every attempt to fix the problem only makes it worse. It's a vicious feedback loop. When markets start to wobble, what do central banks do? That freshly printed money has to go somewhere, so it fuels more speculation in the markets. That speculation inflates even bigger asset bubbles. And those bigger bubbles require even bigger bailouts when they inevitably burst. It's a feedback loop of pure illusion, a self-sustaining mirage of stability that gets more dangerous with every cycle. You can trace this logic all the way back to one man, John Pierpont Morgan. During the panic of 1907, the financial system was on the brink of collapse. J.P. Morgan, a private banker, personally stepped in and bailed out the entire banking system. His power was so immense, so absolute, that it spooked Congress into creating the Federal Reserve in 1913. The official reason was to prevent future panics. But what it actually did was institutionalize them. The Fed became the permanent lender of last resort, the perpetual backstop for reckless behavior. The illusion of safety replaced real financial discipline. By the time 1929 rolled around, investors had become completely complacent, assuming the new Federal Reserve would always be there to save them. Sound familiar? Today, it's the exact same assumption, but on a global scale. The market has been trained, like a Pavlovian dog, to expect a rescue every single time there's trouble. This isn't capitalism. This is institutionalized moral hazard. We no longer have free markets. We have managed perception. Behind every headline about an economic recovery lies another $1 trillion in synthetic liquidity. Behind every glowing growth report lies another massive expansion of debt. And behind every exciting innovation lies another speculative bubble just waiting for a pin. This isn't an accident. It's a feature of the design. So where does this leave all of us? We are living inside the very same illusion that blinded an entire generation in 1929. The system looks powerful, even invincible from the outside, but it's built on borrowed money and borrowed time. Back then, the collapse was devastating but largely localized. Today, a similar collapse would be planetary. In 1929, a few million investors lost their life savings. In the next great crash, entire nations could lose their currencies, because when that tangled web of derivatives finally snaps, it won't just erase wealth on a spreadsheet, it will erase trust. And without trust, the very concept of money ceases to function. The warning signs are flashing bright red right now for anyone willing to look. Global debt is surging to incomprehensible levels. Central banks are trapped, forced to keep printing money to delay the inevitable. A handful of megabanks control the fate of trillions, holding the global economy hostage. And once again, it's ordinary people who will be left holding the bag. We have been here before. We just call it by different names now. We have quantitative easing instead of easy credit. We have collateralized debt obligations instead of investment trusts. History doesn't repeat itself, it upgrades. But maybe the real ghost isn't 1929. Maybe the real ghost is denial. It's our collective belief that this time is different, that we're smarter. But underneath all the complex code, the financial swaps, and the high-frequency trading algorithms, it's still the same old human greed. It's still leverage. It's still the same insatiable hunger for easy money that brought the world to its knees nearly a century ago. So the real question we have to ask ourselves is this: are we any wiser now, or are we just walking the same path in better suits? If you've watched this far, you're part of the small fraction of people who seek the truth, not just comfort. The algorithm will likely try to bury this video, so please share it before it disappears from your feed. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, your fears, or your questions, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because in our next video, we're going to expose the real architects behind this modern financial illusion. The ghost of 1929 is awake, and it's watching.